JPEG, also written as JPG, stands for Joint Photographic Experts Group. These are the same format. The reason you sometimes see JPG instead of JPEG is that older Windows systems could only handle 3-letter file extensions, so the E was dropped. JPEG is the most widely used image format in the world and is the default for almost every camera and smartphone. It uses lossy compression, which means it permanently removes some image data to reduce file size. The result is a much smaller file, but at the cost of some quality. The more you compress a JPEG, the more quality you lose. Every time you save a JPEG after editing, it loses a little more data. That makes it a poor choice for images you plan to edit repeatedly. JPEG images can support very high resolutions, typically up to around 65,535 by 65,535 pixels, though actual limits may depend on the software or device being used. PNG stands for Portable Network Graphics. Unlike JPEG, PNG uses lossless compression, which means it keeps all the image data intact. No quality is lost no matter how many times you save it. What makes PNG especially useful is transparency support. You can make parts of the image invisible, like removing a background from a logo. That is why PNG is the standard format for logos, icons, and any image that needs to sit cleanly on top of other content. PNG files are significantly larger than JPEGs, which makes them less ideal for photos or large backgrounds on websites. GIF stands for Graphics Interchange Format. What made GIF famous is its ability to store simple animations. Multiple frames are saved inside a single file, which play back in a loop. GIFs are widely used for short reaction clips and memes. The major limitation is that GIFs only support 256 colors, which is extremely low compared to modern standards. This is why GIFs often look grainy or washed out, especially on images with gradients or complex colors. For anything requiring smooth animation with full color, GIF is not the right choice. WEBP is a modern format developed by Google specifically for the web. It combines the best parts of JPEG and PNG. It supports lossy compression for smaller file sizes like JPEG, and it also supports transparency like PNG. On top of that, it can even support simple animations like GIF. The result is a format that is generally 25 to 35% smaller than JPEG at the same quality level. That makes websites load faster and use less bandwidth. The main weakness is that not every older application or platform supports it yet, though most modern browsers and devices now handle it without issues. AVIF is one of the newest image formats available and builds on where WEBP left off. It uses a much more advanced compression algorithm that can produce even smaller files than WEBP while maintaining high visual quality. It also supports HDR, wide color gamut, and transparency. The downside is that encoding AVIF files takes significantly more processing power and time compared to older formats. Some older browsers and software may not handle it yet, but for modern web use, AVIF is increasingly being adopted as the next step forward from WEBP.
SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. Unlike every other format on this list so far, SVG is a vector format, not a raster format. Raster images are made of pixels. Zoom in too far, they become blurry. Vector images are built from mathematical paths and shapes, so they can be scaled to any size without losing sharpness at all. An SVG logo looks just as crisp on a phone screen as it does on a billboard. SVGs are also text-based files, meaning developers can open them in a code editor, animate them with CSS, or edit them programmatically. That is why SVG is the standard for website icons, charts, logos, and any graphic that needs to stay sharp at any size. HEIC stands for High Efficiency Image Container. It is the default photo format on iPhones running iOS 11 and later. HEIC uses a more advanced compression method than JPEG, which means it can store a photo at roughly half the file size while maintaining similar or better quality. The problem is compatibility. Windows, many websites, and most non-Apple software do not natively support HEIC. If you send a HEIC photo to someone who is not using Apple software, they may not be able to open it without converting it first. Apple defaults to it because of the storage savings, but it creates friction outside the Apple ecosystem. RAW is not a single format, but a category of formats. Camera manufacturers each have their own version. Nikon uses NEF, Canon uses CR2 or CR3, Sony uses ARW, and so on. What they all have in common is that they store unprocessed image data directly from the camera sensor, with no compression and no in-camera processing applied. This gives photographers complete control in post-production. You can adjust exposure, white balance, color, and sharpness with far more flexibility than you would get from a JPEG straight out of the camera. The trade-off is that RAW files are extremely large and require specialized software like Adobe Lightroom or Capture One to open and edit. TIFF stands for Tagged Image File Format. It is a lossless format widely used in professional photography, publishing, and printing. TIFF files preserve every bit of image data, support multiple layers, and are compatible with most professional software. They are commonly used when quality cannot be compromised, such as archiving scans, preparing images for print, or storing masters in a production workflow. The downside is size. A single TIFF file can be hundreds of megabytes. It is not a format meant for everyday use or web sharing. It is meant for professional storage and production. BMP stands for Bitmap. It is one of the oldest image formats developed by Microsoft. BMP stores image data with little to no compression, which means the files are extremely large even for simple images. There is almost no practical reason to use BMP today. It has been replaced by better alternatives in every use case. You may still encounter it in older Windows software or legacy systems, but for anything modern, it is not a format worth using. ICO is the format used for icons on Windows. When you see the small image that represents a program in your taskbar or on your desktop, that is an ICO file. ICO files can actually contain multiple versions of the same icon at different sizes and resolutions inside a single file. That way, Windows can pull the right size depending on where the icon is being displayed. It is a very specific format used only for this purpose.